I didn't have time to make this intro video before I took it out and performed the Maiden on this plane this morning. I've got the wings off of it so I can put it on the table. I flew it with the auxiliary hatch, and I did put my old run cam, action cam on the front of it. So what you're going to see during this flight, this maiden flight, is the line of sight flight, and then right after the end of the line of sight flight, you'll get to see the video from the FPV perspective with the action cam on the plane. The plane, the 4S power system, has plenty of power. No problem at all. It pushes it very, very well. And it took right off. I did end up shredding my foam hatch for the GPS shelf. I should have thought of that before I put it in the air. I should have put a little piece of packing tape over the top of it, but I didn't think about it. And in flight it came off and the prop shredded it, and you should be able to see it on camera. I saw something white fly off the plane, and then I saw pieces of whatever that white thing that was that flew off the plane, and then I realized what it must have been. So anyway, it was a very successful maiden flight. So I will see you out at the field. You'll see it launched, line of sight, and then if you want to, you can watch the second video from the FPV perspective of the camera. And then I will come back here and give you a couple more tips on assembly on this plane. So after I got it assembled, there were a couple of things that I also wanted to make you aware of. I also ran it up with a fully charged 4S LiPo last night to find out what the current draw was on this 4S power system. So I will give you that information as well. I did also balance my prop before I took it out, before I mounted the prop on the motor and took it out for the maiden flight. So, successful maiden flight. I'll see you out at the field. So, let's see if we can get it in the air at about 60% throttle. Alright, launching. And we did. Back off the throttle a bit. I didn't have any guidance on control surface deflection, and it feels like it's pretty abrupt on the controls. Definitely need a little more expo, especially on the ailerons. Got a nice tight turn radius on it. Keep it out of the sun. That would be bad. Alright, so let's see if we can bring it in here a little bit lower. It really cuts through the air nicely. It seems like it holds on to a lot of its momentum. I'm going to back out of the throttle again. That power system pushes it better than I thought it would. You know, I've got a camera mounted on the front, and I'm just under the recommended weight. I think I'm at about 1,090. I think I'm about at 1,090 grams.
See what the glide looks like. Not bad at all. Alright, so let's gain some altitude and see what the glide looks like. Alright, I've cut power. I think moving that battery back a bit, I think it worked out well because I'm just steering it. I haven't added any elevator yet. Not bad glide, is it? That's zero power, it's just freewheeling. Huh, man, for the ailerons to feel so abrupt, that was a pretty slow roll rate. Of course, it is just an FPV cruiser. And that's just gliding right now. I don't know what stall speed is. You notice that when I hit the throttle pretty hard there, it did nose it down just a little bit. Gliding. Yeah, that's got a really nice glide profile. I like where I have the balance on it right now. Pretty good glide, guys. Glide seems pretty flat. Alright, I want to come back through here again and check out the elevator authority. Oh, something just blew off of it. I think I may have just lost one of my... foam panels. Plenty of power. But I think I just lost a foam panel. Oh man, I should have put some tape across that. I didn't even think about it. But it just got shredded by the prop. I'm pretty sure. I am pretty sure that that was that panel right on the top of the wing. Dang. I'm gonna have to fabricate a cover for it now. Okay, so as soon as the traffic gets through here, we'll bring it in and land it. A successful Maiden. I need a little more, I'm gonna walk out to the road. I need a little more expo on the ailerons. Okay. Alright, so let's get it back over here and see if we can glide it in for a landing. And I got one pulling out over there. Alright, I'm just gliding now. Alright, I'm glad I put skids on it. Pop my hatch. That's just, you know, you guys won't have to worry about any of this stuff if you're landing on grass, you know what I mean? But it's really hard packed out here. But my skids, look, yep, look at that. I lost I lost my foam panel that goes on top of the GPS shelf there. So, but a successful maiden flight. It has a very good glide slope, and I was really surprised by that because it's not exactly a lightweight plane with a 1.5 meter wingspan. So the glide path on it, the glide slope looked fairly flat, and it looked like it could glide for a long time. And I would say you could cruise around with this at about 40% throttle. I mean, I had to keep backing out of throttle. But pretty nice. I was surprised, you know, with all the warpage that I had on the elevator, the horizontal stabilizer and the vertical stabilizer. I wasn't sure how it was going to handle once I got it in the air. But it glides really nice. I'll show you where I've got it balanced. I was still balancing it on the CG, the specified CG. There's a couple little nubs there underneath the wing, and holding it up and getting it at a completely neutral balance. Now I think maybe when I had the battery positioned, when I did the glide test, I think maybe I had a slightly nose down attitude on that CG instead of a completely neutral balance, because I mean it took right off. I think one thing that I might do is shim the motor just a hair. It seemed like when you hit the throttle kind of hard, it looked like it pushed the nose down slightly whenever I did that, and that. So I think that I think it needs a little shimming underneath the motor to get it right through the CG line right there, and then it won't be doing that anymore. So I'll put a couple of thin washers underneath the motor. But I'll see you back at the hangar. There's a couple more assembly tips I want to give you. And I did put this power system on a load meter last night. So I have the current numbers for you guys as well. So I'll see you back at the hangar.
Okay, so very successful maiden flight, I would say, especially given the fact that the shipping company really smashed the box, and they ended up warping my horizontal stabilizer and the vertical stabilizer. So I got those straightened out as best I could. The vertical stabilizer still has a little bit of an angle to it. I was thinking of putting a piece of carbon in it, which is what I did with the horizontal stabilizers. I got them straightened out as well as I could with heat, and that still, didn't satisfy me. So I ended up putting carbon spars in the horizontal stabilizers to straighten them out even more. But it went very well, even with the little warpage on the vertical stabilizer. Tips on the assembly. Okay, so 2 of the ball link screws for the control horns there's 4 of them, obviously, rudder, elevator, and then 2 for the ailerons. So 2 of those ball link screws are longer than the other 2, so make sure that you put the longer ones on the aileron control horns, okay, or you're going to end up having to switch them around. The elevator and rudder linkage rods were a little bit too long to get the ball link tightened all the way down, and then have the rudder and the elevator in a completely neutral position. So I ended up trimming off about 6 millimeters of both of those rods, on the threaded portion. It's got a lot of threaded portion on the end of that rod. So I clipped off about 6 millimeters off of each one, and then I was able to get the rudder and the elevator in a completely neutral position with the servos completely centered up. Okay, the decals, almost every decal set that I've gotten for any plane tends to want to peel up, especially in the areas where the wing slopes up. So I just ended up putting a little bit of glue underneath the decals in those areas, and then that worked out just fine. I also put landing skids on this, and I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, but I think it was 1.5" PVC pipe, and I cut rounds out of it, and then cut them in half, and I used that for the 2 skids in the front, and then 1 on the tail, and those things are pretty lightweight, and they're extremely beefy, and they're pretty darn thick. The walls on them are pretty darn thick. So I don't know why I haven't thought of doing that before. That makes for very inexpensive, very easy landing skids. So if you guys are in the same boat I'm in, where you're landing on a hard surface, PVC pipe works great. And I absolutely love that. Okay, so I put a fully charged 4S LiPo on it last night with the stock prop, which is an APC style prop. Now, of all the motors that I have tested with these APC style props, they are not the most efficient prop to have on a motor. I have never had an APC prop that gave me the best balance of thrust and efficiency. So, running it up at full throttle on a 4S, it pulled 34.4 amps, but it comes with a 30 amp speed controller, right? And at 50% throttle, it was only pulling 11.5 amps. So I switched out the stock 30 amp speed controller for a 40 amp speed controller, because I like having enough headroom on all the components in the power system, whether it's the motor, making sure that I'm not pulling maximum amps from the motor, the ESC, or the battery. I want overhead on all the components, so I put a 40 amp speed controller on it. Now what I will do, since I know these APC style props are not all that efficient, I have a JXF 8x4 composite prop that has better efficiency than this APC style 8x4. So I'm gonna, if I have time, I will put that on a fully charged LiPo tonight on this motor, and I will run it up and see how many amps it's pulling at full throttle on the 4S LiPo. Now, looking at the amount of power that this power system had on this plane when I was pulling that loop, because I mean it pulled it easily with plenty to spare. So I think if you're going to use this for a long range FPV and camera platform with the flight controller and GPS and all that, I think I would put a 7x4 prop on it. on that 4S power system and make it even more efficient. Because if you're just going to be cruising around doing long range FPV, you know, a 7x4 prop I think is going to push it plenty. And then you could use I'm sure you'd be able to use the 30 amp speed controller. So if I have time tonight, I will put the JXF 8x4 on there, run it up, get the current numbers off of it, and then I will put 7x4 composite prop, and I think it may be a JXF also. They're fairly inexpensive composite props, but I'll put a 7x4 on there as well and run it up. If I have time to do that tonight, if not, I'll try to get it done sometime this week, and then I will post that on our Facebook page so you guys will have access to the current numbers on using a couple of different props on this system, so that you can, then I think you'd be able to use the stock 30 amp speed controller. But with it pulling 34.4 amps, I'd be afraid I would burn that ESC up, especially with me, because I'm in the throttle a lot. You know, I'm not easy on the throttle. So anyway, I've got to soften up my ailerons a little bit. I think I'm going to put even more throw in them if I can. The elevator felt good, the rudder felt good. I didn't have any problems with those, but I had 35% expo in the ailerons. I have quite a bit of movement on them. So I bumped that up to 45%. I'm going to put just a little more deflection in the ailerons to improve that roll rate a little bit. And then we'll take it back out and fly it again, and check how the stall characteristic is on it as well. We'll do a stall with it and see how easy it is to recover. See how much that improves the roll rate. Do some more aerobatics with it. You know, try a stall turn with it. And I'm just wondering, you know, with an 8x4 prop, if you know, I'm just wondering if I can get the CG on it. I'm just wondering if this wouldn't fly fine with the 3S LiPo too, as long as it's not really loaded down with as much power as it showed on the 4S system. I'm just wondering if it wouldn't fly really well with the 3S. So if I can get the CG set up on a 3S LiPo, I would definitely be testing that out on down the road. The motor, I do think that this motor needs to be shimmed up just a little bit. It needs more of a downward thrust angle to go through the CG line on the wings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the motor off, and I'm going to put a couple of thin washers underneath the two mount points at the bottom of the motor to push the bottom of the motor up and give it more down angle. Just a couple of thin steel washers or nylon washers I'll put in that, and I think that will take care of that. You know, wanting to push the nose down a little bit, and it'll also make the launches a little bit easier too. I liked where I had it balanced on the CG. It has an excellent glide profile. I was really surprised by that. So, and like I said, I was just about right at the recommended takeoff weight of 1,100 grams, and the maximum takeoff weight is 1,400 grams. So you've got plenty of weight to play around with there for a flight controller, FPV camera, video transmitter, and GPS unit. I think you're going to be well under 1,400 grams, even with the larger LiPo in it. And the LiPo I had in it was a 4S 2200 milliamp hour, and I think that was a 30C LiPo. Plenty of power, plenty of power. All right, so stay tuned, and I will have this back in the air for review part 3. I want to get it handling just the way I like it, and then when I get it to that point, I will be publishing my setup file and my model file on our Facebook page for this plane. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.